Thank you. So my name's Shawn. So we were kind of asked to come chat a little bit about what we're doing with the Army cyber protection teams at Fort Gordon, as well as how we're helping them build tool suites so they can take tools, whether it's from industry or NSA or other players, and create kind of this factory concept where we develop at a factory and deploy it. So we're going to really share a story of how we're doing that. So really to maybe set the stage, there's a story about the B-24 liberators, and when we got when we brought into World War II, the challenge was we were getting more planes shot down than we were actually building. So we had to create a new process where they brought in Sorensen from Ford, and we started to go through really 4 phases. How did we begin to fundamentally change the development process, where we have now standardized parts, meaning wings, planes, wheels, and then we would get into interchangeable, repeatable gears. How do we go through a standardized process? So instead of developing, say, 1 plane a month, we want to create a repeatable process to do 1 plane a day. And then as we go through standardized infrastructure and tooling, and then we wanted to build for change. So how do we take on new modifications, new engines, new weapon systems? And as we start thinking of software as a weapon system, that same release pipeline begins to apply. And we want to go from literally 1 plane a day to 1 plane an hour. So how do we create this agility of DCO tools, of cyber tools? How do we deliver them to the field? And this is really a story of what we're doing down at Fort Gordon. So with that, their particular challenges in the Army, they have a few dozen DCO tools: packet inspection, identity management, threat analytics, malware research, and every tool requires generally a specialist to install it. So they send some sergeant out to the field for every cyber incident, and then they repeat over and over. How do we create kind of this packaging system so that we can bring those tools into the field? And then additionally, we also want to kind of build for change. So if a particular CPT needs a unique version of a database, a unique version of a tool, how do we start fundamentally allowing them to kind of plug and play from a repository, from a toolkit? And then lastly, how do we standardize the management of them? So we don't want a CPT to be a system administrator and have to go into the guts of the cyber kits. How do we allow them to really be focused on the mission instead of focused on networking and operating systems and patches? So from there, we really had kind of 3 goals: to build a trusted host, meaning we wanted to get something accredited at Fort Gordon that could be reused across the Army. We wanted it to be also quite a bit agile in how we delivered applications, so a standardized packaging format. How does anybody in industry like Lockheed, Booz, Defense Point at Accenture, how do we start as industry providing tools? And with that, we focused on something developed through containers. And the idea here is, as every application gets packaged in a standardized way, we can now create software factories where the CPTs can develop their tools and send them out in a unified way, no matter where the end destination is, whether it's on MilCloud, whether it's on a tactical kit, whether it's running on bare metal, a laptop. We no longer have to care. So now we can actually provide tools a little bit more iteratively. And the question then is kind of, what are containers for people who haven't been exposed to them? So the challenge is, it's really 2 things. We have the infrastructure side, which we talk about packaging format, a standardized installation, standardized delivery of software. And then we also have the developer perspective, where all of a sudden I can actually reuse containers without having to care about my endpoint. So now I focus on just my tool, and I don't have to worry about the deployment of it. So as we move forward, the premise is, how do we start building applications at the factory? Meaning we want to preload them in a predefined spec so that they can be deployed anywhere. Ultimately, the containers we've started to work on are developed by companies like Parsons, NetIQ, Accenture, and others. So now we are building this portfolio of kits where we can have a packet inspection, identity management, malware research tools, all in a predefined, why don't we think of it as like an application store, an application mall that we're building out with the CPTs. So it allows us to do things like have all of our software as code. Now the individual CPTs are focusing strictly on tools. So when they go through Fort Gordon, at the cyber school, they learn how to program, they learn how the networking works, they learn how all of the fundamental capabilities are, and that's it. We don't have to teach them about hardware installation, operating system maintenance, patching and provisioning. All of that is really agnosticated away. So to use it, we can literally run a single command. I build the app, and that's it. It predefines all of my libraries, my software, my operating system, my networking. It pre-configures it, and then I can go in and just run it, and that's it. So now I could do something like Docker run packet capture, and it will pull in Suricata. It'll pull in Niagara files from NSO, all predefined for you. So then the question would be, well, if I'm predefining how I want my application deployed, do I get it through bare metal, the cloud? The idea is we no longer care. And with that, we can start building this pipeline. So part of the challenge has been a tool will be developed, it'll be kicked over the wall, and it may not be tailored to the needs. The nerd knobs might be turned the wrong way, it doesn't have the right features. So how do we start building for change? And through that, we get into this conversation of continuous integration or continuous delivery. And now we have a way, through standardized tooling and process, to have a source repository of the tools. We can make an incremental change. It goes through a delivery engine, and we can actually deploy it to any endpoint. So if we have this container, how do we actually orchestrate it? How do we send it out? How do we pre-wire all of them? And through that, we've started working actually with Google on an orchestration engine. So now we need something more. We need to schedule it. We need the lifecycle and health. So part of what we're doing with Google is actually creating an open source framework so that we can take a tool, whether it's a web server in a data center, a DCO packet inspection tool, and actually orchestrate it and say things like, whenever you click to load this app, I need 5 compute nodes and 10 storage nodes, and they need to be networked in the following configuration. We can predefine that, and we started to do it with the CPTs. So now it's not just Red Hat. We've partnered with Google, VMware, even commercial people like Walmart, and now Intel Corporation. So now we're taking some of the commercial packaging formats and allowing industry to define it once. So whether it happens to be packaged for the military, for the intelligence, for commercial purposes, it's the same exact packaging format. So with that, we can actually start building a repository of DCO tools. And now, one of the things we're following up with is we've realized all of a sudden it's not just enough to have the tool, we need to have the predefined networking that comes with it. So how do we have a DoD STIG compliant network laid out? How do we fit into software-defined radio? We can actually predefine these things. And outside of the network, we need to have an app repository, like an app mall. So we started to go through, commercially, we publish it through the Red Hat registry. So that'd be core tools like web servers, database servers, predefined commercial imagery, images, tools. But we've also now started to work with Fort Belvoir guys and actually publish images of Niagara files, packet capture tools, malware tools, that anybody in the DCO community can start publishing to and pulling from. So if you want the NSA version of packet capture, you can actually point to it, download it on the high side, get it pre-configured, get it pre-staged, get it on the approved product list, and off you go. Metrics and logging. And then we also kind of are trying to build for lifecycle management. So as we go through, how do we make sure that when we go from version X to Y, that it is a known entity? And how do we go ahead and version it for reusability, as well as a self-service portal? So the way we've started to do that is through a platform called OpenShift. And it brings together containers, it brings together the Google resource orchestration layer, and fundamentally that is now starting to roll out on the Army tactical kits. So with that, I know we went a bit fast. Any questions?